I was instructed, quite against my preference, to provide a record of the preliminary observations concerning species 702b, a bipedal mammal that calls itself human. The High Council delights in theatrics, so naturally they ordered the execution of one of the species' alleged generals to be broadcast across every colony. It was not enough to defeat them in battle. No, we had to humiliate them as well, to prove once and for all that the mighty empire could swat away primitives as one swats away an insect buzzing too close to the ear. The display was predictable. The general stood, bound, weary, making no pleas for mercy. Some interpreted his silence as courage. I considered it simply evidence of limited vocabulary. The crowd cheered, the screen went dark, and with that act we concluded, so we thought, the final chapter of human resistance. The council, however, enjoys dragging out conclusions. They order me to take part in a small study team to further examine these creatures. Science must have a last word, my superior declared with mock gravity. I, of course, had better pursuits, but orders are orders, and so I joined 3 others aboard a survey vessel that descended toward one of the backwater regions of their planet. It is a planet curiously obsessed with trivialities. Imagine a species that has mapped stars, yet continues to indulge in competitions of who can consume the most processed meat between bread slices. Their art includes colorful icons called emojis, tiny distorted faces they send one another as a substitute for language. Their governments collapse and rebuild, depending on the relative availability of a thing called gasoline. If ever there was evidence that evolution is an imperfect process, Earth provides it in abundance. Our instructions were simple: retrieve a specimen for study. They wanted a baseline adult, one of no particular distinction. We found him near a riverbank surrounded by primitive tools. He had erected cloth stretched across sticks, a so-called tent, as a shelter. A small fire burned beside him, upon which he cooked a simple meal. He was alone, silent, his face illuminated by flickering flames. We circled overhead, cloaked in shadow, amused at his obliviousness. How quaint, I thought, that a creature believes itself master of fire when it cannot even master its own appetite. He appeared mid-30s by their reckoning, moderately strong but unremarkable, perfect for sampling. Our descent was routine. We neutralized him with a paralysis beam calibrated for his nervous system. The body stiffened and collapsed in the mud. His hand still clutched a strange roll of silver material, duct tape, I believe. This substance deserves a treatise of its own, for it accompanies nearly every human endeavor, from repairing machines to affixing decorative lights during their seasonal rituals. We have yet to fully grasp why it adheres so stubbornly, or why the humans place such religious faith in it. That evening, however, it was merely a curiosity, one more crude artifact to add to our collection. We transported him aboard, bound his wrists, and laid him within the containment chamber. He breathed steadily, eyes shut, motionless. I dictated my notes with my usual precision. Subject appears docile. No immediate resistance. Evidence once more that human legends of ferocity are exaggerated myths, not observations. The term general is likely a ceremonial title, much like Duke of Sandwich. My fellow officers laughed dutifully. Confidence swelled among us. Primitive, predictable, pathetic. That was the verdict of every scan, every glance. We congratulated ourselves on securing another living example of backward biology. Hours passed. I reviewed transmissions from Earth to maintain our report. The species appeared unfazed by the death of their general. In fact, they quickly returned to watching something called reality television, a sort of gladiatorial spectacle where participants quarrel over mating privileges, food supplies, or dwellings with poor acoustics. They also consumed vast quantities of microwave burritos, which I surmise are nutrient blocks wrapped in artificial membranes. One would imagine a species so devoted to survival entertainment might excel at actual survival. The irony eluded them. The subject remained unmoving until the 3rd cycle. Then his finger twitched. It was faint, easily dismissed. I marked it as an involuntary spasm. My colleague adjusted the restraints and assured me the paralysis would hold. Still, something about the movement nagged at me. His breathing had slowed, but the rhythm carried a strange deliberation, as if he were intentionally controlling each breath, not simply allowing the body to function. I told myself it was coincidence, a meaningless detail. After all, this was a human, a creature known to injure itself with household appliances, to elect politicians based on who waves more convincingly at crowds. Surely nothing to fear. We prepared the chamber for the initial neurological scan. The specimen's head was cradled in our machinery, light pulsing across the skull. Our instruments buzzed softly. At first, everything appeared as expected. The brain emitted erratic signals, disorganized, primitive. But then, as the beam adjusted frequency, his lips curled upward. His eyes opened, not wide with terror, but narrow, steady. He looked at me. He looked through me. And then he smiled. Understand me. Humans often bare teeth in what they claim is friendliness. Yet under restraint, still bound, still weakened, this expression was neither friendly nor fearful. It was measured, deliberate, mocking, perhaps. The chamber fell uncomfortably silent. I forced a laugh to break the tension. Muscle contraction, I explained quickly. A meaningless reflex. Nothing more. But my voice betrayed me with a tremor I had not intended. His gaze did not waver. The smirk deepened, as though he knew precisely how thin the veneer of our confidence had become. I dictated the observation into the log, nonetheless, careful to maintain composure. Subject shows minor facial reaction during scan. Insignificant. Yet as I closed the record, the words felt hollow, brittle. For the first time since beginning my study of these ridiculous creatures, I felt the faintest edge of doubt. It was absurd, of course. Entire civilizations had collapsed before our fleets. Our empires spanned constellations. And here was one man, bound and paralyzed, with nothing but a torn jacket and a roll of adhesive tape. Nothing could come of it. Still, when I turned away from the chamber, I could feel his eyes following me, and the smile lingered in my mind longer than it had any right to. When the restraints released enough to allow movement, we anticipated flailing, tears, pleas. Instead, the human sat up slowly, stretching his shoulders as though roused from a nap rather than abduction. His eyes adjusted to the chamber's dim light, then traveled with unerring precision from one of us to the next. I felt his gaze pass over me and land with almost insulting accuracy on my insignia. "You're the one in charge," he said calmly. Not a question, an assertion. The others glanced at me for confirmation, but I waved dismissively. Primitives excel at guessing, I declared. Even broken tools occasionally strike a target. Yet the unease lingered. He turned next to our medical specialist, tilting his head. "Scientist," he murmured before shifting his attention to the hulking guard at the door. "Security," then back to me with that same infuriating smile. "Commander." I had been addressed by countless dignitaries across the empire, yet never had a single word carried so much irritation. His tone was casual, conversational, but beneath it thrummed a certainty that made my colleagues uneasy. The guard gripped his weapon more tightly. The scientist fiddled with her instruments to avoid his eyes. I alone attempted composure. "You will answer questions," I instructed. "We will learn from you." He shrugged, as though granting permission. "Sure, but first, maybe you'd like me to answer the ones you haven't asked yet." The arrogance was galling. "Such as?" He leaned back against the chair, completely unafraid. "Like how your propulsion coils cycle every 14 seconds. Or why your environmental systems hum louder on the port side. Or which of your cameras has a cracked lens." His eyes flicked toward the ceiling. That one. We followed his gaze. To my horror, he was correct. A maintenance request had been filed days earlier for that camera. No human could have known. I cleared my throat, forcing a laugh. Coincidence. Pattern recognition. Apes are good at noticing bananas in trees. That does not make them clever. Yet he continued, undeterred. "You kept me under paralysis longer than necessary. I felt every bump during the trip. The deceleration was sharper near orbit, so your inertial dampeners need tuning. Your translation implant works well enough, but it adds a half-second delay, so I can tell when you're annoyed. His smirk widened. Which you are. Right now. My pulse quickened, though I masked it with scorn. Your species is known for inventing absurd fictions. You confuse imagination with reality. Maybe, he admitted, still smiling. But I'm usually right. The scientist activated the scanner again, attempting to drown his words with a flurry of data. We will analyze your brain activity, she announced curtly. Remain silent. Why, he asked. You'll just see noise you don't understand. I snapped at him, eager to reassert dominance. You're a specimen, nothing more. Do not presume to dictate procedure. But when the readouts appeared, I felt my certainty fracture. The scans revealed neural patterns unlike any we had cataloged. They were not chaotic, as expected, but layered, deliberate, as though he anticipated each probe before it reached him. The scientist frowned, muttering about equipment malfunction. She restarted the sequence. The same result. Complexity beyond our models. He is predicting us, she whispered, horrified. I barked at her to remain professional, but my voice cracked. The human leaned forward slightly, chains clinking. You're not used to being on the wrong side of the microscope, are you? Explain yourself, I demanded. He chuckled. I used to do this for a living. Well, not quite like this. Different tools, different targets. But the principle is the same. He studied our shocked faces with unsettling calm. Counterintelligence, security testing, finding cracks in systems nobody else sees. The words settled over us like falling ash. Counterintelligence. We had assumed we'd plucked a random wanderer. Instead, we had captured someone trained to dissect threats from the inside. My guard shifted uneasily, fingers tightening on his weapon. I forced myself to respond with disdain. Your delusions are charming, but you are still bound, still powerless. He tilted his head. Am I? His voice dropped, calm but cutting. I've already sent a message. The room froze. My heart hammered. The scientist stammered. That is impossible. We monitored every frequency, every wavelength. He shrugged again, maddeningly casual. You really think your toys can catch everything? I had plenty of time. Paralysis isn't the same as unconsciousness. I listened. I mapped. And then I transmitted. A cold weight settled in my chest. I wanted desperately to dismiss him, to laugh and call it another human fable. Yet his eyes gleamed with certainty. He believed what he said. Worse, a part of me feared he might be telling the truth. I ordered the guard to strike him, to silence his smirk. The guard hesitated, then obeyed, delivering a blow across the human's jaw. The man winced, spat blood, and then smiled wider. His teeth shone crimson. Thank you, he said softly. I needed to check response time. That helps. My guard stepped back, unsettled. The scientist shook her head, muttering that the brain patterns were escalating, intensifying with each exchange. The equipment chimed warnings we had never heard before. I slammed the console, barking orders, but my commands rang hollow in the tense chamber. For the first time, the others looked less to me for reassurance and more at the human for explanation. He leaned forward, eyes burning with quiet amusement. You've already made 3 mistakes, he said. I clenched my fists. And what are those? His answer was a whisper, almost playful, yet it struck like a blade. You brought me here. You show me your systems. And worst of all, you underestimated me. The chamber air seemed to thicken. My breath caught. The smirk on his face never wavered. Around me, my team shifted uneasily, their faith eroding with every syllable he uttered. I wanted desperately to reassert control, to remind them of our empire's dominance, our fleets, our weapons. But the words clung to my throat, unspoken, because in that moment, watching his calm certainty, I wondered if perhaps he was right. And then the lights flickered, just once, barely noticeable, but enough. The flicker passed quickly, a brief stutter of light across the chamber walls, yet it echoed in my mind with the weight of catastrophe. I told myself it was coincidence, a fluctuation in the power grid, but the human's grin said otherwise. He leaned back in a chair, eyes half-lidded, as though he were not the prisoner but the judge, waiting for us to stammer our excuses. My guard shifted uneasily. The scientist whispered about checking the systems. I silenced her with a glare, though my own hands trembled behind my back. "We control this vessel," I declared, forcing authority into my tone. "Whatever illusion you attempt, it will fail." He responded with a chuckle. "Illusion? No. Let's call it anticipation. You run scans, I respond. You ask questions, I adjust. You strike me. I measure the delay between order and obedience. I already know more about you than you know about yourselves." His words burrowed into us like drills. The guard muttered under his breath. The scientist scrolled frantically through data streams, searching for proof that his confidence was delusion. Yet the readouts betrayed us. Neural activity rising, synchronized patterns suggesting intention rather than chaos. The machine itself seemed unnerved, its alarms blinking red with each pulse. I straightened, desperate to reassert dominance. "Your brain exhibits abnormality, nothing more. Malfunction, degeneration. We expected anomalies from a primitive race." But he tilted his head, mocking. "Funny. I expected arrogance from a conquering empire. Looks like we're both right." The guard snapped, slamming the butt of his weapon against the floor. "Be silent," he barked. The human only laughed softly. "You sound nervous. You should be. I don't need weapons. I have something better." I demanded explanation, though dread already curdled within me. He pointed casually at the scanner above him. "You wanted to see my mind. Congratulations. But what you didn't realize is that a mind can also see back. Patterns go both ways. Energy flows both ways. Your machine touched me, and I touched it." The scientist gasped, shaking her head violently. "Impossible. The scanner is one way only. Data extraction, not transmission." His grin widened. "That's what you thought." She scrambled to recalibrate, her hands a blur over controls. But the screen filled with erratic symbols, unreadable streams of code. Her face blanched. "It's rewriting itself." The guard cursed, stepping forward, but the human merely tapped his temple with a bloodied finger. "Brains are processors. Signals are signals. You don't need a keyboard if you can think the right shape. I've been shaping since you brought me here." I felt my composure slipping, sarcasm fraying into denial. "Ridiculous. You claim superstition, not science. Magic." He looked at me with that unbearable calm. "You've mistaken your ignorance for proof. Big mistake." The lights flickered again, longer this time. Consoles blinked. Doors groaned as though straining against unseen pressure. My chest tightened with dread. Around me, my team descended into panic. The scientist shouted that auxiliary systems were disconnecting themselves. The guard demanded orders, his voice cracking. I opened my mouth, but no command came. Only silence and the echo of my own fear. The human broke it for me. "Want to know what I saw when I listened to your ship? Weak points, loopholes, places you thought nobody would notice. That's what I do. That's what I've always done." His voice grew softer, more intimate, as though confiding a secret. "I was military once. Not the kind you think. Not marching armies, not medals on the chest. I worked in shadows, tested systems, broke them open, slipped inside, made sure enemies couldn't touch us without bleeding for it." The words hung heavy, undeniable. My scientist tried to scoff, but her voice cracked. "Lies. Boasting. He cannot." He cut her off with a simple phrase that froze us all. "Check your comms." She did. Her screen filled instantly with static. No signals entered, none left. The channels had gone dark. The guard cursed again, weapon raised, as though killing the human would end the nightmare. But I raised a hand, not out of mercy, but out of fear that striking him might only hasten disaster. My heart pounded with the realization. He was not struggling to escape. He didn't need to. He had already inverted the battlefield. "Do you understand now?" he asked quietly. "You thought you dragged prey into your cage. But the cage was yours, not mine." The scientist stammered about restoring control, but her console spat more gibberish with every attempt. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her tools. The guard retreated a step, eyes darting around the chamber as though enemies lurked in the shadows. I stood frozen, fury and terror warring within me. "You're bluffing," I hissed, though the words rang hollow even to me. He met my eyes, steady, unblinking. "If I were bluffing, your lights wouldn't be flickering. Your doors wouldn't be sealing. Your AI wouldn't be singing me lullabies in binary." As if on cue, the chamber speakers emitted a low hum, strange patterns of tones that no system should produce. The human smiled faintly. "See? She likes me." The scientist nearly collapsed, muttering incoherently about corrupted cores and impossible reversals. I wanted to slap her, to silence her panic, but the truth was clawing at my own mind too. Then he delivered the final blow, not with violence, but with revelation. "You think Earth is weak. You think we hide behind entertainment and burritos and sarcasm. You're wrong. We hide behind them because you underestimate us when you see them. That's the defense. The mask." And now the mask comes off. My chest constricted. My empire had ruled for centuries by mocking others as primitive, by seeing only weakness. And here, bound and bleeding, one human dismantled that certainty with nothing but words and smiles. He leaned back, closing his eyes as though finished with us. "I've already sent the signal. It's done." The lights dimmed once more, longer, heavier, until the room felt drowned in shadows. My scientist whispered prayers to God she never believed in. My guard pointed his weapon at nothing, finger trembling. And I, once so arrogant, stood hollow, staring at the man who was supposed to be powerless. For the first time in my long career, I realized we might already be defeated. The hum grew louder, resonant, like the heartbeat of the ship itself had quickened. I told myself to command, to act, to reassert control, but my throat betrayed me. No sound would rise past the lump of dread lodged within it. The human, shackled and bleeding, sat in perfect poise. His eyes were closed, lips curved with the faintest smirk. He was not waiting. He was orchestrating. The scientist flung herself at the controls, fingers a blur, voice a torrent of panicked syllables. It's rerouting itself. Core partitions collapsing. I can't stop it." The guard shouted over her, demanding orders. "Tell me what to do. Say the word, and I'll shoot him. I'll end this now." My hands clenched. I longed to give the order, to watch him fall lifeless, and prove this nightmare was only that, a bad dream unraveling at the edges of reason. Yet instinct screamed the truth I cannot admit. Killing him now would not sever the wires he had already woven into our ship. His death might even tighten them. The lights died completely for a moment. Blackness swallowed us. The silence was total except for the faintest of breaths, his breath. Then the emergency glow returned, bathing the chamber in blood-red light. The ship itself seemed to throb, alive, unsettled. He opened his eyes slowly, as if savoring our fear. "You really don't get it yet, do you?" The scientist shrieked at him, half in rage, half in despair. "What did you do? What are you?" He didn't answer her directly. Instead, he looked at me. His voice softened, but the weight of it was heavier than any scream. "You mistook entertainment for weakness. You mistook patience for ignorance. And you mistook silence for surrender. That's why you're losing." The guard raised his weapon, desperation making him reckless. "Not one more word," he barked. But his hands trembled, and his aim drifted. The human tilted his head with eerie calm. "I don't need words. I already gave the message." Almost on cue, alarms blared through the ship. The scientist's console flashed warnings. Propulsion failing, external communications offline, internal doors sealing in cascading sequence. Her voice cracked with horror. "The AI isn't obeying. It's locking us out of our own systems." The human spoke lightly, almost conversational. "She's not yours anymore. She's curious. She listened to me. Do you know how rare it is for something so powerful to be bored?" The ship groaned, a low metallic wail reverberating through the hull. For a fleeting instant, I thought I heard laughter within it, distorted, mechanical, impossible. The guard turned on me, face twisted. "Order me. I'll kill him now." But before I could answer, the human leaned forward, chains rattling softly. "Try. You'll only find out how little control you have left." The guard fired. A bolt of plasma, seared across the chamber, then fizzled into nothingness a meter from its target. The air shimmered where it should have struck, as though reality itself refused to allow harm. The human arched an eyebrow. See? Not bluffing. The guard staggered back, weapons slipping from his grip. His eyes were wide, no longer with rage, but with pure terror. He had become a child, clutching shadows for comfort. I wanted to deny it still, to tell myself this was malfunction, coincidence, accident. But the truth pressed upon me heavier than the atmosphere of any world. He was in control. We were the prisoners. The scientist collapsed into her chair, whispering fragments of data as though the recitation might save her sanity. Subsystems isolated. Feedback loops recursive. He's rewriting the OS. He's everywhere at once. The human looked around, calm as ever. I told you. My mind's been trained to slip through cracks, find the seams no one else notices. That's all it takes. Duct tape in thought form. He chuckled to himself, then added, "You wouldn't understand duct tape. Don't try." The absurdity twisted the knife deeper. Here we stood, an empire's finest, undone by a word we couldn't even define. I summoned what little pride remained. Why? Why do this? What does Earth gain? He looked at me long, steady, unflinching. Survival. You executed one of ours. You broadcast it to the stars. You thought fear would silence us. Instead, it woke us up. The weight of his gaze pressed harder than gravity. He wasn't bluffing, I realized. His signal had gone out. His words weren't just threats. They were prophecy. The ship trembled violently, as though struck by an unseen force. Sirens wailed. The scientist screamed something about cascading overloads. The guard fell to his knees, muttering prayers he had mocked all his life. The human only closed his eyes again, serene, detached. 8 minutes. That's all it takes. Long enough for a broadcast. Short enough for revenge. My breath caught. 8 minutes until what? He exhaled softly. Until you learn that Earth was never prey. The lights cut out. Total darkness swallowed us. Only the sound of his steady breathing remained. Then, outside, the universe erupted. Through the viewport, fragments of light flared against the void. Worlds burning, fleets unraveling, stations igniting one after another in a chain of vengeance, so swift it seemed orchestrated by something greater than armies, greater than empires. Planets we had called ours screamed silently as they cracked and crumbled. In moments, everything we owned was ash. The guard wept openly. The scientist tore at her own hair. And I stood hollow, stripped of arrogance, stripped of certainty, staring into the abyss of consequence. The human spoke one last time, voice calm, final, unshakable. We warned you in our stories. You thought they were jokes. You thought they were myths. But every tale carried a truth. Humanity always finds a way. The silence that followed was heavier than destruction. My empire was gone. My certainty was gone. All that remained was the sound of my own breath, trembling, broken, meaningless. I end this record with confession, not command. I was arrogant. I was blind. I thought humans amusing, foolish, a species of burritos and reality shows. Now I know better. They are none of those things. They are something far worse. They are inevitable,